Welcome to the show both feared and revered by man and beast, the Helios blog. Today, well, it's Moistkr1tical versus Sneako. What else needs to be said?
The reason she's alone is because she's difficult.
Women are not accepting the bare minimum.
Women fuck men they respect.
All the women who say things like, I'm strong, independent, I don't need no man, like, y'all impress me.
Women just gaslight each other and say what they want to hear.
Eyes of cringe to become the moon. Yeah, so, being serious now, since this has become such a big issue, I've been in a lot of drama recently. I'm in hot water, and I'm biting on the fart bubbles that pop up in the bathtub here. It is a lot. So let's start with the most recent one today. My retirement. I didn't know I was retiring. That's news to me. I'm as shocked as all of you are. I had a ton of fun last night playing a game called Clickleding, which is basically like a cuckoldry simulator, but for clicking against like the Lorax in a hotel room. And I just did like an old school gameplay commentary video. I was bubbly, full of...
I wonder, how can you be named something like Moistkr1tical and expect to be taken seriously? I don't know. That's crazy to me.
Jubilation. I posted it today only to learn that I'm just a big old fucking liar. Liar, liar, plants for hire, I suppose. Apparently, and I didn't know this until I posted the video, everyone was under the impression that I was quitting the internet. So I started scratching at the hair on my chinny chin, wondering, when the fuck did that happen? Was I sleepwalking? Do I have somnambulism? Is this some kind of, like, you know, Fight Club situation? But instead of, like, Tyler Durden, I have fucking Charles Turt.
He's so funny. He's almost funny is how I would describe this guy's humor.
In here that's just making wrong announcements. It turns out the patient zero behind all of this was a post Jackson made announcing that I would be leaving the podcasts, which is something I thought about periodically for quite a few months now, mainly because I started to recognize that I was becoming the very thing I'd make fun of with being chronically online. Like, I just was always online, and the podcasts were a big proponent of that, and I just kind of wanted to scale back the amount of time I spend online, and I kept Jackson in the loop the whole time here about where my head was at, and last week I told him, hey man, I think this is going to be where I hang up the jersey, you can put it in the rafters, throw it in the dumpster, but I think I'm just going to be, you know, sailing off into the sunset here and just reducing the amount of stuff I do online. Which he completely understood, so he made the announcement just letting people know that, and then that got spun on Twitter and Reddit as Moistkr1tical taking an indefinite hiatus and quitting the internet, fundamentally. Don't know when I'll be back, he's done with the internet because of all this controversy. Patooey on his grave, he's gone. When looking at the post, I don't even know where that's coming from. It's literally just talking about the podcast and me just stepping away. Like, it doesn't extend beyond that. I can't even wrap my tiny noodle around how anyone could perceive this as me being done with the internet entirely, but that's the story that they ran with, and that's what most people saw, not the actual post. So,
I don't... Okay, who cares? Random guy who's not funny decides to do less stuff on the internet. Who cares?
Everyone thought I was quitting the internet, so I posted that video that I was really happy with because it just felt like an OG old school video that made me happy. And then bang! Just a flood of comments and dislikes all saying shit like, how could you fucking deceive us? I thought you quit, huh? What happened to leaving, huh? I just read this post on Twitter from an account that had a profile pic of titties photoshopped onto Thomas Edison that said you were done, and it had 50,000 likes, so I know it was true, and you're just a fucking liar. I can't even just peacefully walk away from some projects without it being a massive fucking reaction over actual nothing burger information. And trust me, no one has a palate more refined for nothing burgers than me. I have ranted about the stupidest shit of all time, but this was mind-boggling even for me. So to set the record straight, no, I'm not retiring, despite what the experts are telling you. All I did was walk away from a couple of projects. Like, that's really it. Like, that's a pretty normal thing to do, especially when one of them I've been doing for, like, 8 years. I really didn't think it was that deep, especially not deep enough for how big of a story it's become with all of the wild narratives running around about the true reason that I stopped doing it. So let's get into that drama. I've talked about it on stream, I don't even know how many times at this point, but we'll just talk about all of it in this video here. So, when covering the Ava Tyson situation, I was attacked by a lot of people for not being quick enough. Even though I covered it within like the first 6 hours, people were unsatisfied that I hadn't made a video within like the first fucking 20 minutes of it dropping. And then when I did finally finish the full video covering all of it, it was another massive problem where now I only did it out of an obligation because people called me out, and then I also got accused of being a transphobe because I didn't use Ava Tyson's preferred pronouns, which were she, her. I didn't know that. I thought just calling Ava Tyson by her name was okay, and I had also heard when I went to the Mr. Beast thing, someone refer to Ava Tyson with they. So I was truly under the impression that that was okay. And for that, I was annihilated by a good chunk of Twitter. And then annihilated by another good chunk of Twitter because I called out Sneako, who was the main proponent about me covering for Mr. Beast to keep the collab alive. I wasn't talking about Ava Tyson because I wanted the Mr. Beast collab. And I talked about...
I literally have no idea what's being talked about, but this is so stupid. I'm not even sure why I'm making a video on it.
How absurd that
Hopefully
statement was,
something good
especially given
appears.
his history with fighting against the age of consent. He's been very vocal about how much he hates the age of consent, and so I talked about...
Yeah. Okay. And then Moistkr1tical had a debate with Sneako, and then Sneako is just like, why do you believe what you believe? And he has no nothing, like everything that Moistkr1tical believes, he's just like Hassan, right? Like the only reason he holds his beliefs is because the general public holds them. So NPC.
About that briefly at the end of the video, which then...
And he said it's always been the case. Well, actually, no. Age of consent has only been the case for about 100 years. For like most of history, if the parents agreed that the children would get married and it would be a family decision, then the kids would get married, and it, you know, usually there'd be an age gap, right? Now, I'm not saying the girl would be 12, but she also wouldn't be 16 to 18 either a lot of the time. And even, what, our grandparents' generation, let's say, or let's put it a different way, because there's listeners of many different ages on my show. Let's say your parents or grandparents were born in like the year, what, 1940? Like around World War II? Well, though their parents were getting married at 16 to 18. Married. And they had children by 17, 18 years old. Were they kids? Do you see what I'm saying?
And changed the whole narrative for a lot of people, where I never talked about Ava Tyson and only talked about Sneako. So it was a complete lose.
So your grandparents and great-grandparents were all, they were all child lovers because of how that worked? Like, no, of course not.
Lose, because if I didn't talk about what Sneako was saying, I would have been called a coward for not addressing it and talking about, like, well, he was going to cover for Mr. Beast until Sneako called him out. So, like, if I didn't do it, I would have been attacked. I did do it, still got attacked. It really was unwinnable. But from that spawned a conversation where I talked to Sneako directly, because he was very upset that I was talking about how him rallying against the age of consent is pedophile arguments, like defending pedophilia. As I've said since the very beginning of this channel, I'm always willing to engage with people I disagree with, and I thought that maybe there was a chance I misunderstood what he was trying to say, even though it's still abhorrent. I thought, okay, maybe he's not actually trying to defend pedophilia, he's like some kind of pseudo-intellectual debate bro who's trying to say something else. So I was willing to hear him out on it, and I talked to him in DMs, and he said he doesn't believe in the age of consent, he believes in the age of marriage, can't assign a number to it, but said that when someone can legally drive, they should be able to marry at the same time, which is literally like a 15 or 16-year-old, because you get your permit at 15, your license at 16.
Okay, again, let's make this hypothetical situation. And again, maybe people in the comments will be super against it. I don't know, okay? But let's take it out of 2024. Let's say it's 1924, okay? So this is like the Great Depression time. And although not for all countries, but I digress. And you have two families who are talking about marrying their kids. The boy is 20, the girl is 15. And they're talking about marrying the children, and you know, both families agree to it, both of the children agree to it, of the parents, and they get married. And then, you know, by the time the girl's 17 and the guy is 22, they already have their first kid. Is the kid, is the boy, or the man in that story, is he a kid lover? Again, you tell me in the comments. Now if we go to 2024, same thing. So it's not done behind anybody's back. It's all above board. Everybody knows. The parents know on both sides. Both of the kids agree to it. Both of the parents want it. Is the 20-year-old man a kid lover? You tell me.
And both are way too young to be marrying. That shit is completely unacceptable. It is downright disgusting. He then said that he was happy to discuss it in a call, which I said I was willing to hear him out on, and he said that he would do it later because he was outside doing an IRL stream in Turkey. So, I was willing to hear him out because, again, if this is some kind of crazy misunderstanding, I'd like to know that, because it'd be really fucking scary for someone in his position with his level of influence to be actually advocating for adults marrying and fucking children. That's a huge problem. That's a big fucking problem. So if there was something that he was like trying to say...
Yes, but adults as determined by whose definition and in what time period, right? Like, that's the thing, right? And is it done because the guy has a problem, or is it done because... Okay, and yeah, and then we can go to different cultures, right? Like in Muslim cultures, I'm sure it's pretty common, right? Or in certain Asian cultures, right? Like, just because it's not done in, you know, the United States by guys that are virtue signalers that only believe what the crowd believes and what his audience believes, which is mostly women because he's very left-leaning. Like, again, let's continue.
But failing to do so, I was willing to at least hear it. And this is where the infamous debate came from. The debate that people are calling the debate of the century. I'm kidding, not a single soul on the planet said that. It's actually one of the most dogshit debates I think human beings have ever had. He eventually called me on Discord. I was under the impression this was just him and I talking. I had no idea this was going to be a debate. I thought he was going to try and explain himself like, hey, no, this isn't actually what I meant. This is what I'm trying to say. I thought this was a conversation between him and I, not this kind of debate show that he was putting on for his audience. There is nothing in our DMs that indicated that's where it was going. When I joined the call, he asked if I was going to record it, to which I said, I can if he wants me to, but I was also down to just talk. So I thought maybe he wanted it as a recording to, like, explain to people, like, no, he's not actually a pedophile defender or advocating for that kind of thing.
Again, he's using, like... Okay, now, for the record, I have qualms against, let's say you have a 40-year-old and he's marrying a 12-year-old, or you have a 40-year-old and he's marrying a 15-year-old. That I'm against. But if it's like 20 and 15 and both of the families agree, or 18 and 15, or, you know, like, stuff like that, I don't think that makes the guy in the situation evil. I don't think so. But you could perhaps argue for 28, 32, and 15, 32 and 16 is a bit, you know, is a bit much. Or 32 and 15, whatever, you know. But I don't think that's what Sneako was arguing for. I don't, again, I don't know.
So I thought that is why he asked. I didn't know it was because it was being streamed. Especially because one of his last DMs was about how he's doing an outside IRL stream and he would call me after. To me that says when he's done streaming, that's when we'll talk, not as a part of his stream. I didn't know this was a debate nor a stream until about an hour and 40 into it, roughly somewhere in that ballpark. I am not a debater. I've never claimed to be one. I never want to be a debater. I've always said that I believe conversations are the most productive because debates always devolve into what side can score the most points by explaining their thought process, even if the position is wrong. Whereas a conversation is a very different.
Yes, but just because you believe that the position he holds is wrong doesn't mean that the position he holds is wrong. Those are two different things.
Thing to me. So I didn't even know that's what this was. So obviously I was unprepared for a fucking debate. So I entered into the Thunderdome and we started talking. I made it clear that I found his statements on the age of consent and children marrying adults being fucking hideous. Absolutely revolting. And then he started arguing about, well, what is a child? We must define a child, you know. It's not actually being under 18. It's all a bunch of hooey. And I really think if you have to start arguing about, well, what technically is a child, you're already way too far gone. Like, that is so fucking weird. And in no uncertain terms, multiple times throughout.
Okay, let's just link this back to, what's it called? The whole Donald Trump thing. So, what are all the, what's it called? Democrats calling Trump and Vance? They're calling them weird. So these are talking points of the left. So basically, it's a dog whistle for girls to be like, oh, he's creepy. He's just not saying that. He's saying they're weird. But that's the word that goes in the same conversation. Meanwhile, those very girls that think it's quote-unquote weird, their grandmas got married at 16 to 18. Or whatever. If they're young, maybe it would be their great-grandma. But still, it's not that long ago that... And not only that, what they would find quote-unquote weird, having 10, 12 kids or more, their great-grandmas were doing that, right? So, your great-grandma was weird? Your own flesh and blood? Do you see what I'm saying? It's like... It just takes a very narrow view of history. What he's saying is only what we believe today, this second, is okay, and everything else is not. It's like, well, no, some things in the past were not okay, but a lot of things were fine. Again, I'm against the whole concept of, you know, let's say how they did it in medieval times. 32-year-old with a 12-year-old, or 32-year-old with a 14-year-old. Okay, I'm against that. But a 20-year-old and a 15-year-old, I think, is different. Although, perhaps that's covered under Romeo and Juliet. I'm not sure exactly what the age difference can be. But, again, if both families agree and it's not being done under the table, it's being done with consent from both families and from both parties, and it's not the guy trying to get laid with any girl he can, no matter the age, I think it's fine. I think if it's the second one that I just described, the guy trying to get laid no matter the age, and he's hiding it from everyone, and they're hiding the relationship and all that, and she thinks she's so mature and all that, okay, that's exploitative. But that's not what I'm describing.
Throughout the debate, Sneako says that he is okay with people that are aged 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 marrying adults that are 18 or older.
There are talking globally. Let's just talk.
Yeah, I'm actually fine with this. Again, as long as it's not exploitative, both families know, and as long as it's above board, right? I would say. I don't see what the problem is. And I think in many countries, even in 2024, that's still done. I think in many countries, that's still done today, 2024. It's just not done in America. But this guy has such a narrow view. He thinks only what Americans do in 2024 this second is okay. And if the girls in my audience disagree, it's not okay. Meanwhile, those very girls, if it on TikTok it said it's okay for a 16-year-old to marry a 20-year-old, that second those girls that are calling Sneako weird would agree. Anyway.
Talk globally. Like, do you think it is okay for, I'm not talking about just you specifically anymore, anyone. Do you think it's okay for anyone in their 20s, an adult, to marry a 15 or 16-year-old?
A 21-year-old, if there was a marriage where the father consented and the daughter consented, and it was both good on both families and they wanted to do it, why am I going to get involved? Why should we get the government involved?
Even get back a little bit. Do you think there's not a problem with a child being with an adult?
Okay. We haven't even agreed upon what a child and an adult is. You keep saying that it's 18.
Under 18 is child.
And I'm
over 18
telling
is
you,
adult.
that's not even the definition of the word.
What is the number? There needs to be a number, or else you can do the same thing.
I just told you there's not a number.
Do you see why that's a problem?
No.
If there's no defined... So why can't a 12-year-old marry an 18-year-old?
Because most 12-year-olds haven't gone through puberty yet. And most 12-year-olds...
What if, as you just said, it changes? What if a 12-year-old went through puberty early, the parents consent, the 18-year-old and the parents consent? Can they do it?
Most likely that's
12 is too young.
not going to happen. You know why? Because Islamically, if
we're not talking most likely, just say it.
If the families have consented, the kid is mature, the kid is ready. Why should I stop
at 12 years old? At 12 years old.
If the kid is physically mature, the parents consent, both parties are happy.
A 12-year-old being physically mature.
If that's the only line that actually makes sense.
Again, I don't think a 14-year-old can ever be physically mature.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, no comment.
Even though
I'm inclined to agree, but
even though they literally can. Even though puberty actually defines that, it's fine.
I don't believe so. I was 14 once. But I actually had a mustache when I was 14. Would you have looked at me and said I was physically mature enough to get married?
If you were physically mature, if you were mature, yes, I would. Okay.
Really? When I was 14.
Yeah. If you were 14 and you were ready to go and you met another 14-year-old, yes, I would.
No. We're talking adults. You keep going back to that.
That is adult.
I met
I told you my definition.
Except they're not adults at 14. A man isn't going to be able to support a woman at 14. Certainly not in 2024. That's not going to work. If you want a girl to be younger, like 16, she's not going to be able to take care of herself. She needs an older guy. I don't mean like 10 years older, but just a little bit older, right? It's not going to happen otherwise. But not 40.
I told you the definition.
Adult.
The definition. Okay. If you went through puberty, you're an adult. That's the definition of adult. So yes, if you're an adult and you had a mustache, you're ready to get married, fine. Okay.
Unironically saying a 14-year-old adult, I think would make most sensible people want to puke. There's so many instances of this, and a lot of the conversation was spent with him talking about like overseas age of consent, like talking about how Japan's age of consent was 13 for the longest time, this and that. But the whole thing was like pulling teeth, and it was fucking painful. And I think it's extremely alarming perspective to have. Unironically calling a 14-year-old and 12-year-old mature enough for a marriage, those are middle schoolers. Like, holy shit. I think that is extremely concerning to be advocating for something like that. Like, would Sneako be okay if his best...
Okay, but let's say the girl is in, what? United States, grade 10 or 11, and she's married? Again, perhaps we should discourage girls from getting pregnant at that age, because they do need an education. At least a baseline education. But again, there are literally countries where kids are arranged to be married at 12 years old. In 2024, that happens today. So he's saying that the cultural practices of people that are not like him are all wrong. But that is a matter of opinion rather than fact.
Best friend ended up marrying a 14-year-old? He certainly shouldn't be. No one should be okay with something like that. Like, that's fucking terrible. That is actually terrible. But now, since I wasn't, like, holding him to this topic or making sure it stayed on the topic I thought we were talking about, It went all over the place with a ton of different things, but the big one, and this is what most people have focused on, which was my response to his question about kids transitioning. And the way he would pose that question would be by asking if I thought it was okay if kids who want to switch their gender go to the doctor and get their dick cut off. Is it okay if a 9-year-old goes to a doctor and gets their cock cut off right then and there? And when posed with that question, I replied with yes. And I've talked about this on stream many, many times now, and I'll talk about it again here.
Oh my. Well, there you have it. As liberal as liberal gets.
Thought he was talking in hyperbole. I thought he was just exaggerating, being over the top, talking about the entire subject of transitioning. I had no idea that any living, breathing human being actually thought that that's how transitioning works. Where you just go into a doctor saying, I feel like switching genders, and they lay you down on the operating table and just snip your whole fucking meat off. I didn't know that that's what he actually believed. I didn't know he was speaking literally. I thought he was just referring to the entire process of transitioning and just using this over-the-top statement to encapsulate all of it. Because you literally cannot get that surgery unless you are 18. Like, you actually have to go out of your way to be that stupid on the topic than you would just spending a couple of seconds looking it up. There are very rare cases where someone under 18 has had that surgery performed. That's not common. So I really didn't think that someone could be so dumb on the topic.
Right, and then, what's it called? And then, he... And it's funny because I'll bet that in that case where the person that was under 18 got that surgery, in those very rare instances, he had consent from who? But it's not okay to get married. But it's okay to get your you-know-what cut off. You see what I'm saying? One is positive, one is not necessarily positive. Anyway. Freaking disaster. This is like what happens when you get brainwashed, right? So the liberal media, it just got to him, and he has no capacity for critical thought, no view of countries outside his own, no understanding of what's okay and what's not. Just whatever the talking points of my dominant political group are and my audience is, that's what I believe, and I will defend that to the grave. Again, if you have such low capacity for critical thought, I don't know what to tell you. And then all your arguments are, oh, it's disgusting, oh, it's abhorrent, oh, it's... Those are feelings, those are not logical arguments, so they don't count. You can't use that as an argument and then call yourself a person who's capable of debate or critical thought, because you're not doing critical thought. You are emotionally reacting to situations like who? Like, and we'll end the video there. Hit the like, hit the sub, hit all the notifications. Go buy my books like Hunter M, Adrian L, Tom and Bobby, Dylan, Renaissance Press, Brian, Andrew, Alan, Armani, and Nicholas. Shoutouts to you, most recent purchaser of both my books, Strategist Guide to Seduction and Quotes to Live By. Thank you. If you would like to get early access to my content, I do offer it on my Patreon. If you'd like coaching services like Nicholas here, just message me at my email. That's theheliosblog@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, guys, especially if you listen to the end. I really do appreciate it. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.